G'day guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Wildkard. Thank you for being here and watching my content and giving me the pleasure and privilege every week to talk about the greatest game in the world, rugby. And you are here today because it's Tuesday, it's time to read the news. First up, Six Nations will start this weekend, and I've got the Australian local times here if you're interested to watch. First up, we got Wales vs Ireland at Sunday morning, 1:15 AM. England, Scotland, the big one. Everybody wants to know if England has made the right decision, sacking Eddie Jones up against the old enemy, Scotland, at Twickenham. Are they going to get booed out of Twickenham once again? Which I would see. And on Monday morning, 2 AM, Italy versus France. Yeah, so that's the first week of Six Nations, and this is the first road stop to the Rugby World Cup. And boy, I am very, very excited. Now, with that being said, let's get some news from Australia first. So over the weekend was the Sevens, was it Sydney Sevens? Yeah, Sydney Sevens games, or whatever. Sydney Sevens was what happened on the weekend in here in Sydney, obviously. I didn't go because I don't watch Sevens. Not enough scrummaging for my taste. That's basically it. And but Sir Eddie has showed up to the ground to interact with the fans, which is really, really good for me to see. Just him being involved with the community games, it's already a huge improvement that the previous coaches, something that, no, I wouldn't actually blame the previous coaches. It's something that Rugby Australia has been neglected for a very long time. So just seeing Eddie Jones there is really, really good. But also, there were some speculations by some former players that Eddie Jones has once in the past plucked a man named Matt Giddo out of the Sevens series and debuted him for the Wallabies in the past. So maybe he's there scouting for the next generation of potential 5'8s for the Wallabies. So yeah, so Eddie Jones was doing great work for Rugby Australia once again. There was a interview with Eddie Jones, like kind of official press video for Eddie Jones in Australia last week as well. There was a lot of talks about his goals and everything. So he did talk about trying to bring Australia's golden era back from the late 90s, I guess, back in rugby back, I guess, when he was in charge as well, to some extent, before the Rugby World Cup in 2003, not 23. And yeah, he talked about trying to bring the rugby back. He was pretty humble about what he said. He's saying that he's not really the messiah here to save Australian rugby, but his goal is to try to bring Australia to a better place, which is what we want to know. He was very clear on his intentions that the first target is New Zealand and trying to get the Bledisloe Cup back. He's also, ironically, the first game he will be in charge for the Wallabies is against the Springboks, whereas the last game he was in charge against England was against Springboks as well. So in kind of ironic sense that Eddie Jones will be against the Springboks right away as the first test match for the Wallabies. And yeah, with that being said, what else did he talk about? He talked about, yeah, he also talked about this, the thing that Eddie Jones really kind of emphasizes, that the players do have the talent, which I 100% agree, do have the talent to win, you know, Rugby World Cup. It's not like we don't have the talent. It's just the players have to have the belief in themselves and just really about becoming an actual team, performing under the stage. Like, you know, you showed that we 1 point behind, losing to France, close up against what do you call it, beating the Springboks, and close loss in Ireland against Ireland. So yeah, it's not like we don't have the skills. It's not like we're really far behind, but we just don't have the consistency, something that Eddie Jones has identified already, something that they wanted to fix up. So next up, so yeah, obviously in the Wallabies briefings there was like 45 minutes of questioning. There was an interesting thing that I talked about in this I guess press conference, that Eddie Jones was, you know, even the CEO of Rugby Australia, Hamish McLean, is that his name? McLennan? Anyway, the CEO of Rugby Australia was literally like, they were surprised that Eddie Jones was not under a non-complete clause after he was released from England. Kind of bit of an oversight on the England side, and we'll get to England in a minute. So yeah, there was a bit of a talk about how the Australians were surprised that Eddie Jones was not under a non-complete clause, which speed up their decision to hire Eddie Jones right away. With that being said, a really prominent former rugby player for Australia, Stephen Moore, He's the guy that literally handed me my first 15 jersey when I was playing in school. He's literally like the man in my life. He's a hooker, he's an Australian captain, fellow front rower. I play front row. So yeah, he came out and really made some, you know, statements, like negative statements towards Rugby Australia. He thinks that Rugby Australia is disillusioned with the game. Very short-term views. He's got everything exactly right. Very short-term views, no long-term vision. And he thinks that the decision to hire Eddie Jones is a panic decision. It's a panic decision because Rugby Australia has failed to develop the next generation of their own local coaches, essentially. And yeah, so he really like smashed the Wallabies, not Wallabies, smashed Rugby Australia quite a bit. And I do feel like, you know, guys like Stephen Moore should be more involved in like the management of Rugby Australia instead of, you know, some random guy who's never played for the Wallabies. I feel like someone who has at least played for the Wallabies to some part should be managing Rugby Australia or have a bigger say in Rugby Australia. So yeah, let's move on to England. First up, England's Six Nations campaign is already in turmoil. They're having huge injury issues in very key positions in England at the moment. So the first game against Scotland might come down to a war of attrition before the game even starts. So obviously we've reported last week that England had hooker issues with what's his name, with Jamie George suffering concussion. He's still on the protocol to return to play. He's with the team, so there's a chance that he could play this weekend for England in the hooker position. They desperately need him to be able to play England at the moment. If Jamie George cannot play, England will literally have to debut a new hooker for the occasion against Scotland with what's his name, Luke Cowan-Dickie already out. So yeah, Jamie George is like, you know, on the fringes of trying to make it back into the team. He was early in the week, it was reported that he was not in the team, but later on, the most recent reports is that Jamie George is with the team and working through his concussion protocols. So the hooker position is a very big question mark for England. As we know, Jamie George can play 80 minutes, but it's, you know, very standard now. If he gets an early injury or whatever, England could just leave, you know, have to debut a hooker from the bench. So it's with that being said, England already had issues with Courtney Lawes. I was really looking for Courtney Lawes to play again for England. He's really tremendous. He was looking to be Eddie Jones' captain. He was out last week, and also George McGuigan was George McGuigan. He was also a hooker. He was also ruled out of injury last week. So this week the injuries actually exacerbated a lot for another position, which is the center position. Elliot Daly is the latest guy who's out for 3 months due to a I think it was a calf, I don't know, a calf injury. I think it's a quad injury, it's usually a leg injury, but yeah. So Elliot Daly is out due to a leg injury, and then what's his name? And then this has been exacerbated even worse with Henry Slade, who was cleared of his red card in the championship game after appealing. So he was cleared to play, but he's out of Six Nations as well due to a thigh injury. No, that's Dan Kelly. What's it? Slade is ruled out of hip injury. So yeah, with that being said, Slade is out, and Guy Porter, a guy who was born in Sydney, I believe, grew up in Sydney, yeah, will be playing for England. I do think that Guy Porter was really promising and really good against Japan. I thought Guy Porter should have been picked over Mano Tuilangi to begin with, so it's good to see that Porter is giving another chance. There's a guy from England named Harry Porter, right? Should just get him in there as well, Harry Porter. But anyway, that's just a little side gig for you. Next up, we've got, yeah, so the Elliot Daly. Oh yeah, here is he's out for 3 months, hamstring injury. So yeah, Daly was on fire for the Saracens. He was just, yeah, one of the games, I think 2 weeks ago, he scored like 3 tries in 10 minutes. Really spectacular form, something that we haven't seen from him for at least 12 months now. And I was looking for him to play, and really unfortunate he's out. So yeah, obviously last week the RFU, which is the England's rugby governing body, came out and stated that starting from 1st of July, the tackle heights for all community rugbies will be reduced to basically what they call the what is it called? Yeah, basically to like mid body height here. So the tackle height has been like basically by law changing. They implement as a law to be reduced for all community level rugbies to body height, which has led to a lot of people not happy. Obviously, people don't know, thinks the RFU don't know what they're doing. And as a result, there's a lot of backlash to people signing petitions to get Bill Sweeney, which is the CEO, to step down, that sort of things. And the RFU has come out, trying to put out the fire, issued an apology to everyone, saying that, hey, sorry, we didn't consult everyone before this decision was made. We will be consulting everyone going forward. They basically took a little step back, saying that this is not completely finalized. We will, get some community feedback and go forward and see how this goes. We will be putting out. They have released evidence of what the decision was based on. So they released some articles, some research articles that which led to the decision to drop to universally drop the tackle height as a law. And then they also, they've introduced that, and they've also basically said they will be releasing videos and stuff and training videos and stuff to tell people how this could be implemented going in the future. So they're going to be making like literal training videos to send out to the clubs, to send out to the coaches, and teach people how this should be done. But yeah, there was a lot of unhappy people that came out from this decision. So obviously the CEO, Bill Sweeney, this guy, I actually didn't know this is what he looked like. I thought in my mind, for some reason, I thought someone else. I didn't know this is actually what he looked like. But anyway, Bill Sweeney has potentially facing a no confidence vote by the grassroots clubs. So apparently 200 clubs has joined forces to call for a general special meeting of the RFU, and they will be looking at voting no confidence against Bill Sweeney. This is the guy, who decided to fire Eddie Jones. This is the guy who, under his watch, 2 premiership clubs has gone under. The Wasps and the Warriors have both gone bankrupt this year. And not because they were like, not because of like poor financial practices. Essentially, both clubs were over leveraging without any oversight from the RFU, which led to both clubs being bankrupt. In fact, in the case of the Warriors, the Worcester's Warriors, there were allegedly people in management lining up their own pockets with big bonuses, whilst heavily leveraging the clubs. So that's like really, really bad for that's like I don't know, it's like really bad financial practices that was like not being that was like left unchecked. Essentially, you're paying yourself huge bonuses whilst hiding your losses. Essentially, that's what the managers were allegedly doing at the Warriors, and this is all under the watch of Bill Sweeney. So yeah, there's a lot of negativity towards him at the moment, and obviously, the RFU is like, we're gonna show you the evidence of our decision. So here it is. They have released these articles that states the evidence. I did read this thing, so I will not bore you exactly the thing, but here are some important things. I put them into a note that I will that kind of like summarize what they're talking about. Some of this stuff that they were. Yeah, so they have video analysis. Let me just, how do I just get rid of this side here? Here we go. Can I make this a bit smaller? Yeah, so they release these little things that, I don't know, it's, basically they've done a research that looked at, that examined like video footages of tackles from a lot of different competitions at various different levels. And based on their analysis, they have determined that the most dangerous situation that leads to HIA, a concussion, is head-to-head contact. Okay, so that's the biggest finding, and so that's the issue that they've identified. The biggest leading factor is head-to-head contact, and the higher the contact, the more likely leading to a concussion. So, and then they also discovered that 29% of the concussion occurs to the ball carrier, while 71% occurs to the tackler. So they have found that the tackler is more at risk of receiving the concussion. So they have found that a HIA, a concussion, is more likely to occur, which at 4.2 times higher, 4.2 times more likely to occur if the tackle is made above sternum. So obviously that chance of head-on-head collision is very high. So they basically, based on these issues, right, they have found the solution to be dropping body height of the tackler as a solution to the problem. So obviously they've done a couple of different researches. One is making tackles at armpit high, and another one is done what's called the navel, at the sternum high, which is your sternum here, and the other one's armpit high, which is here, so slightly lower. And they have found that dropping the height from armpit high to sternum reduced the concussion occurrences by 30%. And then they have concluded that at what's called the navel height, which is just about the middle section above your belly button here, the navel height is the safest place to make tackle based on these assessments. They do, however, have pointed out that the behavior of the ball carrier, which is something that a lot of people have talked about, is an important contributing factor to the concussion. So they said that if the ball carrier makes a dip in body height, making it difficult for the tackler to drop their body height, should be penalized. Yes, it is recommended that if the ball carrier ducks into the tackle and results in a head collision, the ball carrier should be penalized if the tackler is low. So that's an interesting recommendation from the research. I don't think that's actually been implemented, but that is part of the research paper which came out of this paper here. And another interesting thing is that they didn't say that the ball carrier dipping. They definitely said should be a penalty, to be considered to be a penalty. But there's another one which is a weird one, where they recommended that the bump, what's called the bump, if the ball carrier intentionally bumped themselves into the tackler, makes the tackle much more dangerous. Whereas if the ball carrier tries to evade the tackle, will make it a lot safer. It's a lot safer, even if they just run at like any sort of angle other than directly at the defender, will make the tackle a lot safer for both parties. So they may say something like, it's recommended that the ball carrier try to evade the tackle instead of bumping into, try to do like sort of bump in over a tackler. So that's some interesting stuff I think that could be considered. But they also have admitted in this article itself that this will be difficult to implement in the community levels, because you don't have the TMO and stuff to look at all these different details. So yeah, it's interesting to see. So yeah, that's the evidence that they've come up. So, and that's the solution that they've come up with, is to drop the tackle height to reduce the concussion for community level rugby. But the one thing that I would like to say to just throw my little 2 cents into the thing is, they have an issue here, which is the people banging their heads. Oh yeah, sorry. Before I finish, they also did found that the likeliness of the tackler getting a concussion by hitting someone on the hip or hitting someone on the knee because they're going low in the tackle is a lot lower, and the severity is lower than a head-on-head collision. So that's a really interesting fact, a result that came up as well. So for me, I've only ever had a concussion where I was kneed in the head going low on somebody. I've never had a head-on-head collision in a shoulder-to-shoulder impact contact. So for me, I think a lot of people would think that getting kneed in the head is a very, it's very dangerous for the tackler. But yeah, they according to the research, it's less likely concussion occurs less frequent in that circumstance than head-on-head. So for me, based on this information that's given, the problem is it's actually not head-on-head tackles. It's actually not knee hitting someone's head leading to concussions. It's not like the ball carrier dipping. The problem is a reckless attempt to make a tackle that causes concussions. That seems to be the bigger issue. It's not the tackle height. It's the fact that when a tackle is made recklessly, a concussion is more likely to occur, regardless of body height. That's what I got out of this. And in my opinion, instead of dropping the tackle height, there needs to be a consideration for reckless tackles, because I don't think anybody goes into a tackle, whether it be shoulder to shoulder or shoulder to hip, with the intention to knock someone in the head. So there should be a distinction between a reckless tackle and an unintentional head collision, which happens a lot in rugby. That's my take. And I think the solution is not just to say, hey, everybody drop your body high, because you can still drop your body high and going for a reckless tackle and end up injuring yourself by hitting yourself in someone's knee, right? So it's not, I don't think they've actually pinpointed the issue here. The issue here is not people banging their heads together leading to concussion. The issue here is people committing to reckless tackles in the first place. That's what I think the issue here. They have. That's what I think. What this research is. That's where I think this research is flawed. It's not the tackle height that's the issue. It's the reckless attempt at a tackle that's an issue. So yeah. Anyway, let me know your thoughts. But that's the evidence that the RFU has provided, and obviously this has trickling effects in Australia, including what is his name? Field Goal. He's a rugby league pundit. I actually watch his video a lot. He talks a lot about this sort of stuff, and he thinks that this is a kind of worm that's being opened up. Sonny Williams sent a video out where he got concussed going a low tackle. I think he banged someone in the knee or banged someone in the hip. So Sonny Williams actually said that he agrees that it's not about the tackle height. It's about a reckless attempt for someone taking a shot at someone. I think it's a bit more than that. I think it's a bit more than just someone like trying to take a shot. That's an issue. I think it's just people recklessly trying to make a tackle at any circumstance, whether it's taking a shot or not. But players needs to be coached better to not make a reckless attempt at tackle for any circumstance. Not just Sonny Williams says it's just people trying to like take cheap shots on somebody. Not just that alone, in my opinion. But anyway, let's move on. Billy Vunipola has been talking about leaving the Saracens. So yeah, he's not been selected by Bothwick's team. So there's a lot of speculations of what he wants to do with his future. Maybe come back to Australia. Billy Vunipola was born in Sydney. Maybe he can come and play in Super Rugby and have a bit of fun back in the sun. And next up, let's move to Scotland now. So there was an interview with Gregor Townsend at the Rugby podcast. And obviously one of the questions came up is his relationship with Finn Russell. Was that like a personal issue between him and Finn? And was that, there's a lot of speculations. So obviously Gregor Townsend denies that there was some, personal issues between him and Finn Russell, and he based his decision making for not selecting him in the November Test series based on performance. And he did say one thing that is kind of interesting to me is that he did say that after Finn Russell being dropped and he was sent back home, he was impressed, sent back to Rusty 92. He was impressed with his performance, and he was also impressed with how Stuart Hogg handled with the captaincy taken away from him. So he kind of denies that it's a personal issue, but it is really clear that he confirmed that he wants to prod the player, let's send out a warning to the players a little bit, and to kind of to show them that their off-field antics is punished, essentially punishing their off-field antics. The players basically went out partying last year after the Italy game, and was told to not go out party, and as a result, Townsend was not happy. But anyway, so he does say that, confirm that he wanted to test out the players, to drop them from their positions and see how they cope with it. So that is the interesting thing from Gregor Townsend. He holds no personal agenda, but he does deliver his wrath upon his players. So next up, Johnny Gray has returned. He was last week reported not injured and not being able to participate in the Six Nations, at least earlier on, but he has returned on the weekend, so he will be potentially he'll be potentially playing this weekend. Once again, he's been cleared. So Jamie Hodgson was his replacement, would be returning to his club. Next up, there's some calls for the Flower of Scotland national anthem to be scrapped for the Scottish team, because it's obviously the lyrics talks about sending Sir Eddie Jones's army back home, and to think again, right? So obviously Eddie Jones is no longer the coach of England Rugby. They think the national anthem that refers to sending Edward's army back to think again is no longer appropriate. So they wanted to change the national anthem, which I agree. Yeah, definitely change your national anthem. Especially, you know, you made it to refer to Eddie Jones. Now Eddie's not there. You should definitely change it. Yeah, I agree. Change it. Obviously the players and stuff don't agree with it, but I think you should change your national anthem. Yes. Next up, Wales obviously is engulfed in all sorts of issues. They were having players leaving because of a lack of funding to the club, or like, you know, what was happening. They basically couldn't agree on a what do you call it, on a contract, a player contract, because of couldn't agree finances for players' contracts this year due to their own financial issues. And now the Welsh Rugby Union has come out and being alleged. There was a video. There was a television documentary released last week that alleged Welsh Rugby Union has a history of misogyny, sexism, racism, and homophobia. Yeah, so there was a documentary about this, and the chief executive, Steve Phillips, has resigned on Sunday in Wales. Obviously, there were issues in Wales earlier this year that has been reviewed. We reported it already. There was a lady, Charlotte Wattam. She basically alleged that there were people, you know, sexually threatening her, and there were people in office thinking about committing, being bullied to the extreme. And then there was basically her allegation was settled like out of court or something, like a couple weeks ago. Can't remember exact details, but yeah, this came out like a few weeks ago, and then last weekend, or like a documentary came out. So yeah, this is a really bad for Welsh Rugby. They're gonna have to open up an investigation into the club, essentially, to see what's going to happen and how they will go forward with the issue. This is pretty bad for Wales Rugby. And also, Warrent Gatland is inherited an absolute bucket of trash in Wales at the moment. So he's obviously trying to get Wales back on track on Six Nations and going to the Rugby World Cup after Wayne Pivac got sacked. And now he has to deal with the Netflix filming a behind-the-scenes series for the Six Nations, and Gatland are not happy about it for a number of reasons. He does feel like, because the Netflix series, he does not have editorial, editorial rights on the videos, so he cannot decide what gets put onto the videos for Netflix, and therefore he's really uncomfortable having the crew around him. They're basically saying that a lot of times, behind the doors, the teams do say a lot of, especially coaches and players do say a lot of abusive stuff about the opposition, especially if it's a bitter rival. I think it's pretty normal for us, even everybody does that. And he thinks that if without editorial rights, that could be taken out of context and being used, and putting him and the reputation of Wales Rugby at a really poor spot. So yeah, he's not happy about Netflix doing a documentary whilst he's in charge. Next up, this is a little bit stupid. Actually, let's just not talk about it. And then, next up, Bernard Laporte, he's the France Federation president, has officially resigned because he's being indicted for corruption. He's officially resigned. And finally, Brad Moore has found as a job as the attacking coach for Scotland going into Six Nations. So yeah, Scotland, I'm actually looking forward to seeing them play against England this weekend. Yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I will be doing a preview of the teams when they're announced on about Friday, Thursday for you guys. And thanks for watching, guys. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys a bit later this week for the Six Nations previews, and then obviously the Six Nations reviews this weekend. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.